I grew up in a pretty standard family, just me and my folks, living in a small, cozy house at the edge of town. My dad worked the late shifts at the factory, and my mom was a cashier at the local grocery store. Money was tight, but we got by. I was their only kid, and they poured all their love into me, even though I wasn't the easiest child to care for. From a young age, I was always the sickly one, catching colds that seemed to linger for weeks and struggling with a bunch of allergies that kept me indoors more than out. I was thin, way too thin for my age, and my clothes? Well, let's just say fashion was the least of our concerns. School was a battlefield. I tried to blend into the background, but somehow, I always stood out, and not in a good way. My classmate, Sarah, she made sure of that. Sarah was everything I wasn't: popular, pretty, and always dressed like she was about to walk into a photo shoot. One day, trying to dodge the bullies, I was late to class. Slipping into my seat, I hoped for a quiet day. That hope vanished the moment Sarah noticed me. "Look who decided to show up," Sarah sneered, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Thought you were too sick to come to school, or did you finally find something to wear that didn't come from a charity bin?" Her friends laughed, echoing her cruelty. I wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to hide. I kept my eyes down, whispering, "Just leave me alone, Sarah." "What was that?" she mocked, stepping closer. "Can't hear you. Speak up." Before I could muster a response, Mr. Jenkins, our math teacher, entered the room, cutting off whatever Sarah had planned next. The rest of the day, I kept to myself, speaking only when spoken to, and even then, my words were barely above a whisper. At home, things were different. It was my safe haven. My parents, seeing my downcast eyes at dinner, exchanged worried glances. "Nellie, honey, you barely touched your food. Something happened at school today?" my mom asked, her voice full of concern. I shrugged, pushing my food around my plate. "It's nothing. Just tired, I guess." My dad, quiet until now, put down his fork. "You know, Nellie, you can talk to us. Whatever it is, we're here for you." I nodded, knowing they meant every word. But explaining the day's humiliation felt impossible. "Thanks, Dad. I'm just really tired. Think I'll head to bed early." Dragging my feet towards the school gates, I braced myself for another day of dodging glares and whispered insults. My backpack felt like it weighed a ton, loaded with textbooks and the heavy dread of facing Sarah and her clique. As I navigated the crowded hallways, trying my best to become invisible, I heard the all-too-familiar voice that made my stomach twist in knots. "Hey, ghost girl, try not to vanish before class starts," sneered Mark, one of Sarah's loyal sidekicks. His nickname for me, a jab at my pale complexion and tendency to keep to myself, echoed off the lockers, drawing snickers from nearby students. I quickened my pace, not daring to look up. "Just ignore him," I muttered to myself, but the words felt hollow. The day's first challenge was surviving homeroom. Mrs. Parker, ever oblivious, droned on about the importance of attendance just as I slipped into my seat at the back. I barely settled in when Sarah, draped in her latest fashionable outfit, sauntered in, her entourage in tow. "Nice of you to join us, Nellie. We were worried you got lost in your closet of hand-me-downs," Sarah quipped loudly, tossing her hair as she passed my desk. A chorus of laughter followed. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks. "Just leave me alone," I shot back quietly, more to my desk than to her. "What was that, Nellie?" "Speak up, we can't hear you," Sarah taunted, turning to face me with a smirk. I shook my head, choosing silence over a battle I couldn't win. The bell rang, a temporary reprieve, but the relief was short-lived. Each class transition felt like running a gauntlet, with Sarah and her crew lying in wait to hurl their next insult or snide comment. Lunchtime was no sanctuary either. I found a secluded spot under an old oak tree, a safe distance from the cafeteria's chaos and cruelty. As I nibbled on my sandwich, thoughts of just disappearing consumed me. "Hey, why you sitting all by yourself here?" a voice interrupted my solitude. I looked up to see Jake, a guy from my English class. He wasn't one of Sarah's crowd, but I was wary all the same. "Just like the quiet," I replied, hoping he'd take the hint and leave me be. He shrugged, unfazed, and sat down beside me. "Suit yourself. Sarah's being a real piece of work, huh?" I was taken aback by his bluntness. "You could say that," I admitted, surprised by my own candor. "Listen, Nellie, you can't let her get to you. She's all talk," Jake said, his tone earnest. I wanted to believe him, to find the strength to stand up to Sarah, but the words felt like a distant dream. "Easier said than done," I mumbled, my gaze fixed on the grass below. The bell, signaling the end of lunch, snapped me out of my reverie. Gathering my things, I offered Jake a small smile. "Thanks for, sitting with me." "No problem. See you around, Nellie," he said, heading back to the building. The rest of the day passed in a blur. With each class, I counted down the minutes until I could escape back to the safety of my home. But the day wasn't without its lessons. Jake's unexpected kindness was a glimmer of hope, a reminder that not everyone was against me. School had become a nightmare for me, one I couldn't wake up from. Every day was a repeat of the last, dodging insults, hiding from Sarah and her gang, and trying, unsuccessfully, to blend into the background. It wasn't long before the stress of it all started to take a real toll on me. I found myself feeling physically sick, my old ailments flaring up with a vengeance, alongside new ones. Headaches, stomachaches, you name it, I had it. I was a mess, inside and out. One evening, I was curled up on the sofa, a blanket wrapped around me, trying to shake off the latest in a long line of migraines when Grandma came over. She had this way of seeing right through you, and that day was no different. "Nellie, this isn't just about being sick, is it?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. I tried to shrug it off. "I'm fine, Grandma. Just tired." She wasn't having any of it. "Nonsense. You're sick, yes, but it's not just physical, is it? It's those kids at school, isn't it?" I hesitated, then the floodgates opened. I told her everything about Sarah, the bullying, the constant dread that filled my days. Grandma listened, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "Nellie, your body is reacting to your stress and anxiety. It's making you ill. All these problems with your classmates are affecting your health." I was stunned. Could my being bullied be the reason I was always sick? Seeing my confusion, Grandma explained further. "Stress can have a real, physical impact on your body. It's important we address not just the symptoms, but the cause as well." The next day, Grandma sat down with my parents and me to discuss a plan. It was clear that continuing to attend school wasn't an option, not if things stayed as they were. After much discussion, my parents decided to switch me to distance learning. It was a big change, but one that felt necessary. The difference was night and day. Away from the constant harassment and anxiety, I started to heal. My headaches became less frequent, my stomach settled, and I found myself actually able to concentrate on my studies without the looming shadow of Sarah and her taunts. I was sitting at the kitchen table one afternoon, working through a set of math problems, when Mom came in to make a cup of tea. She watched me for a moment, then said, "You seem different, Nellie. Better. Happier, even." I hadn't really thought about it, but she was right. "I guess I am," I admitted. "It's weird not having to worry about what's going to happen at school every day." Mom nodded, a relieved smile spreading across her face. "I'm just glad to see you feeling better. We should have done this sooner." The transition wasn't without its challenges. I missed the few friends I had, and adjusting to a new way of learning took time. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, I found myself grateful for the change. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. One morning, as I logged onto my first virtual class, my mom knocked softly on my door. "Nellie, you okay with this? Missin' your friends?" she asked, peeking in with a concerned look.